Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava. I don't even remember my melody now. I knew the other one. Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava. No. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. How does my tune go? Krishna Chaitanya.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
I can't remember the chords for that one. Anyway, we don't need a guitar. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandanam Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jairadhamadava Kunjabihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Brihadakacharya Astottara Satashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astottara Satashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swami Namane Pachai Purvarakshancha Bhaktachara Bhavinata Parartha Karunyam Yasya Sarvejtam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 5, Chapter 11, Once, text number 13 and 14. 13 y 14, por supuesto. Kshetragya Atma Purusha Parana Sakshat Svayam Jyotir Aja Paresha Narayano Bhagavan Vasudeva Svamaya Yatmanyava Diyamana Yatanila Stavara Jangamam Atma Svarupena Nivishta Ishat Evam Paro Bhagavan Vasudeva Kshetragya Atmedam Anupravishtaha Kshetragya Atma Purusha Parana Sakshat Svayam Jyotir Ajap Paresha Narayano Bhagavan Vasudeva Svamaya Yatmanya Vadiyamana Yatanila Stavara Jangamanam Atma Svarupena Nivishta Ishat Evam Paro Bhagavan Vasudeva Kshetragya Atmedam Anupravishta Kshetragya Atma Purusha Parana Sakshat Svayam Jyotir Ajap Paresha Narayano Bhagavan Vasudeva Svamaya Svamaya yatmanyavadiyamana yatanilastavara jangamanam atma svarupena nivishta ishat evam paro bhagavan vasudeva kshetragya atmedam anupravishta. Word for word translation says kshetragya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there is a asterisk here, a footnote, which is not on this page on Vedabase. Do you see it, Taraka Prabhu? There's some commentary on why Kshetragya means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it's not loading here. Hold on. Let's see if it's in this one. No, it's not either. Maybe it's just a typo. Anyway, Kshetragya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Atma, all-pervading, present everywhere. Purushaha, the unrestricted controller who has unlimited power. Puranaha, the original. Sakshad, perceivable by hearing from the authorities and by direct perception. Wow. Swayam, personal. Jyoti, manifesting his bodily rays, the Brahman effulgence. Aja, never born. Paresha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narayana, the resting place of all living entities. Bhagavan, the Personality of Godhead with 6 full opulences. Vasudeva, the shelter of everything manifested and non-manifest. Svamayaya, by his own potency. Atmani, in his own self or in the ordinary living entities. Avadiyamana, existing as the controller. Yata, much as Anilaha, the air. Stavara, of non-moving living entities. Jangamanam, and of the moving living entities. Atmasvarupena, by his expansion as the supersoul. Nivishtaha, entered. Ishet, controls. Evam, thus. Paraha, transcendental. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva, the shelter of everything. Kshetragya, known as Kshetragya. Atma, the vital force. Idam, this material world. Anupravishtaha, entered within. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are 2 kinds of kshetragya. For those who are unfamiliar with this term, kshetra is the place or field of activities, like Kurukshetra, the place of the Kurus, actually. And gya means the knower, like jnana. So kshetragya refers to one who knows the field. This is described by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. Kshetragya, someone who knows the field of activities of this world. There are 2 kinds of kshetragya, the living entity, as explained above, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is explained as follows. He is the all-pervading cause of creation. He is full in himself and is not dependent on others. He is perceived by hearing and direct perception. He is self-effulgent and does not experience birth, death, old age, or disease. He is the controller of all the demigods, beginning with Lord Brahma. He is called Narayana, and he is the shelter of living entities after the annihilation of this material world. He is full of all opulences, and he is the resting place of everything material. He is therefore known as Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his own potency, he is present within the hearts of all living entities, just as the air or vital force is within the bodies of all beings, moving and non-moving. In this way, he controls the body. In his partial feature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters all bodies and controls them. Awesome. Purport. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha Every living being is controlled by the supreme living being, Param Atma, who resides within everyone's heart. He is the Purusha Avatara, who creates this material world. The first Purusha Avatara is Mahavishnu, and that Mahavishnu is the plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna's first expansion is Baladeva, and his next expansions are Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna. Vasudeva is the original cause of the Brahmajyoti, and the Brahmajyoti is the expansion of the rays of the body of Vasudeva. Here's a verse from Brahma Samhita. Yasya prabha prabhavato jagar andakoti kotishvashesha vasudhari vibhuti binam tad brahma nishkalam anantam ashesha bhutam govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahma, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is thus described in Bhagavad Gita. This is an autobiography. Maya tatamidam sarvam jar avyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani nachaham teshvavashtita. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. This is the position of the plenary expansions of Krishna as the all-pervading Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Wow. Amazing verse and purport, as always. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Avantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scham. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Itanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hey. So this verse gives some of the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We understand that God is not just some sentiment, some ideas, or even just the necessary cause, but he's a Supreme Person. Bhagavan, it's said here. Kshetragya, Purushaha. These are all descriptions of a person who knows what's going on. He knows what's up. It's a person that's attractive. That's a person that we want to be a part of, to love, to serve. Someone who's with it. Kshetragya. It's just such an appropriate term, meaning one who knows what's going on. And if we also want to be Kshetragya, knowing what's going on, We have to understand the science of God. Not just the sentimental belief in God, which is great, by the way. But Srimad Bhagavatam gives us a scientific approach to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such that we can fully utilize our intelligence. And when our intelligence is fully engaged in the service of Lord, then we can really invest our heart also. For many people, it's hard for them to be fully devoted to God because they don't have a comprehensive understanding. Their definition is lacking, and therefore their hearts are filled with doubt. And then they come to Krishna consciousness, which is many of us in this room probably found that we struggled with the religions of families because we needed something more comprehensive, something that invests and utilizes all of our intelligence. And that's what's presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. Scientific approach to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As is said explicitly by Sutta Goswami in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in its second chapter. He says to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead scientifically, we must come to the mode of goodness. Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead means knowing his expansions, his forms, how he interacts with this material energy, and what is the relationship of the jivas, us, the soul, to the Lord. Then we have scientific knowledge of God. And it's really quite remarkable that people, they want this so much, just so much. You know, just on Monday, we had a Bhagavad Gita discussion at the center. And there's this girl who's been coming along for a long time who, by any superficial estimation, would be considered, you know, just this typical yogi girl, just like a child in an adult body. Oftentimes, these university students are like that, like children in adult bodies, just so inexperienced and very immature, unfortunately. But in this Bhagavad Gita discussion, she suddenly asked, you know, a question that she had been contemplating, considering, having started reading the books and really trying to understand. She was asking about who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna or Vishnu? And it's just remarkable that here's a person who, you know, hardly a few months ago, perhaps a year ago, was just so uninterested in understanding God, like a typical youth, you know, just jaded by all sorts of religiosity that she had seen thus far. But now was like really trying to understand deeply what is the nature of Krishna. And her inquiry was just so sincere and so inspired by what she had been reading thus far. It's remarkable that that coming in contact with a scientific understanding of God is able to awaken this devotion to Krishna. Just like if you want to be an expert painter, first you have to understand a little bit of the science of the medium, the canvas, the viscosity of the paints, you know, color theory. There's an actual science to painting. If you want to be a great musician, you have to know the science of music. There is, you know, harmonies. There is the circle of fifths. Surely Sarvama Prabhu knows this stuff expertly, inside and out. And then when you know the science, then you can get into the art, the self-expression, the devotion. It's the same with Krishna. If we know the science, then we can be confident that our devotion can manifest in a healthy way and will not be shaken or disturbed by any demonstration of the illusory energy or by any doubt proposed by some person with lack of faith. So we have to come to this level of scientific understanding of the Supreme Personality of God. And that's what's described in these verses here, which is just so remarkable. Many people, they know God as Allah, the greatest, or Jehovah, Yahweh, some description of the person, like is described here. Purana, the oldest. Paresha, the supreme. But only Srimad Bhagavatam goes on to describe Krishna as Bhagavan, the possessor of all opulences. Narayana, the resting place of the shelter of all living entities. Jyoti, the source of light and effulgence for everyone. And Purushaha, the Supreme Person. The Srimad Bhagavatam is really quite unique in giving a description of God that's so comprehensive that I've yet to meet a single person who, having heard the description of Krishna, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Srimad Bhagavatam, I've yet to meet a person who can propose something more complete, more comprehensive, and more satisfying to the intelligence. There simply isn't. Who was that philosopher that said that God, by definition, is the greatest thing? Who was that philosopher? Sridananda Goswami is often mentioning him, but I can't remember him now. Slipping my mind this morning. Anyway, the point of this philosophy is that to understand God as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Krishna, the enjoyer and the lover, is a remarkable thing presented in Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is a spiritual science. And because it's a spiritual science, we can have confidence that you can describe Anselm, Akari Krishna, wow, coming in clutch. Yes, Anselm, on his ontological argument for the existence of God. He said God, by definition, is the greatest thing. That's what everybody agrees upon as a definition of God. And so therefore, a thing which exists is greater than something that doesn't exist. His argument was sort of a clever play on words for why God therefore must exist. But Sridananda Goswami takes it further to say that Anselm is really arguing that therefore Krishna is God, because you cannot come up with a definition greater than that. You simply cannot. And because understanding God is a science, we can have confidence that it can be taught to others. It can be learned by us so thoroughly that we have absolutely no doubt, and that we can feel very confident in investing our heart in Krishna. And because it is a science, we can be confident that it can be taught to others, that people really can learn it. And the ones you don't even suspect can understand God inside and out by His grace, by the grace of the devotees. Even young college girls, 19, 20 years old, who are suddenly inquiring about what is the relationship between Krishna and Vishnu. It's just so remarkable that that potential is there because Srila Prabhupada has presented such a comprehensive science. So for that, we're so fortunate. So we shouldn't shy away from these verses which describe God in all of His majesty, which describe God in His different expansions. Sometimes we're more interested in some leela, some challenge, some emotional exchange, some story like that. But we should appreciate just how scientific and how clearly presented are some of these verses, so that we can have confidence that our heart is invested in the right place and in the right way. Otherwise, failing to understand God scientifically, and by scientifically I mean knowing Krishna as Akila Chaitanya Rasa, the Supreme, because He is the origin of all emotional experience, and knowing Narayana, Vishnu, to be an expansion of the Lord, via Baladev, Pradyumna, how these expansions have different functions for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of all the energies. Understanding the different relationships between these avatars, their function, how they interact with material energy, and also how they interact with the jiva, the yoga between the living entity and the Lord. That's understanding scientifically. When we know this scientifically, then we can come to a place of real devotion. Not knowing scientifically can be a little risky for us. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text number 10, Krishna describes, what is the challenge to really coming to the level of devotion, bhava, affectionate love for the Lord. And some of those challenges are the anger that we feel in the face of hypocritical or sentimental religiosity. And that's what so many people are jaded by right now, especially young people. We've shared previously the statistics about world religions, about how Christianity is on a huge decline in America. It's projected that by 2050, Christianity will have declined by 25%. It's because young people are frustrated and angry at what they perceive as hypocrisy in practice, or a lack of comprehensive philosophical understanding of God. This Pew research showed that the largest category of religionists are the unaffiliated, those who still have some idea of God, some faith in something divine, but cannot affiliate themselves with something. And Krishna points exactly to why that is. And dear devotees, it's something that we should be very aware of in our attempt to help others to become Krishna conscious. People are so angry, frustrated with hypocrisy and sentiment, and it's unattractive to them. And even though so many people, they have a faith in God or some creator or something divine, they cannot affiliate themselves. Statistically, this is proven by Pew Research. They cannot affiliate themselves with any particular practice. Krishna addresses this directly in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text number 10. Such an important verse for us to contemplate. He says, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. What are three of the obstacles in the way of our growing devotion? Raga, attachment, bhaya, fear, and krodha, anger. He says, I should read the whole verse. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashita bhava jnanatapasaputamad bhavam agataha. He says, when you're freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past have become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. This is the remarkable thing that we get to see on the daily when we try to share Krishna consciousness with others. People, they come, and even if they have some sentiment towards God, still their obstacle is that they have attachment, obviously. They have fear and krodha. Prabhupada says very explicitly in this purport, anger at all sorts of hypocrisy in religion. Anger at the sentimentalism, the lack of philosophical substance. Many people today are frustrated with that. And unfortunately, many traditions of the world do not address the need for a comprehensive scientific understanding of God, and instead recourse to other methods of coercion which are not as wholesome. Not everyone is inimical and malicious, of course, but lacking comprehensive philosophical and scientific understanding of God, people have to resort to other methods of convincing. Well, you don't want to go to hell for eternity, right? So therefore worship God. This isn't very profoundly philosophical. This is not very scientific. And yet for a lot of people, that's as far as their religiosity goes. So Krishna is encouraging us to go deeper by recognizing what is the obstacle. Our attachment to the bodily concept of life, our fear of a personal identity, and our anger at all sorts of hypocrisy and sentiment in religion. Then, if we can overcome these things, then what does he say? Bhavo jnana tapasa, being purified by knowledge of me, puta, one attains love for me, mad bhavam agata. So this is a scientific approach to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And again, we can watch people doing it. You can watch this happening. You can watch the transformation in a person's heart as they overcome their attachments to this material world, as they overcome their fear of personal identity and a personal supreme, and as they overcome their anger. And this is so important. Overcome their anger at the hypocrisy and sentimentalism which is often portrayed by believers. If we want to do more than just hypocrisy and sentiment, we must approach and appreciate this scientific explanation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's what keeps our devotion sincere and honest. So, it's a little something that I'm getting from this verse and purport here. This description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is rich, it's comprehensive. We can contemplate each word of the description of the Lord and really try to know God more than just out of our own, just frustration with this material world. We should try to know God more than just our fear, more than just because of a fear of death. But to know him fully is how you love someone. That's how we love Krishna. To try to understand. Of course, we can never know God in full. He's anantarupa, an unlimited form. But from what he's revealed in Srimad Bhagavatam, what is revealed by his devotees, we should really try to understand and contemplate. What does it mean that the Lord is Bhagavan, the possessor of 6 opulences? What does it mean, Svamayaya, how he acts, maintains everything by his own potency? What does it mean that he's the supreme controller? What does that mean for my life, that he's the supreme controller? I should really deeply contemplate this and not just be hindered by attachment and by fear and by anger. When we know Krishna scientifically, then we can share it with others scientifically. And thus, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters, was able to give an answer to this girl at the Bhagavad Gita discussion that was satisfying. So, yes, it is remarkable to understand Krishna scientifically. Hare Krishna. That's all I have to say about this verse, because it is a wonderful description of the Lord, and I'm just appreciating how our Srimad Bhagavatam just goes so deep in ways that previously I had never experienced before coming to Krishna consciousness. I do want to share one other thing, though, just remembering, because of the significance of this girl I was telling you about and the question that she was asking. It's just remarkable that you never know who the Lord's going to give that mercy to so they can really, really understand. Because so many people, they can hear about Krishna, and all of them are positively affected. All of them are benefited in ways that we might not understand, really. Everyone who comes in contact with Krishna's name, or even with the devotees, they're positively benefited. But you just never know who is going to take that gift and really value it and appreciate it and become a sincere devotee, sincere Vaishnava. In all the different programs or settings where I've seen people new to Krishna consciousness coming along, I've never been able to guess, like, this is the person that's really going to get serious about it. It's always a surprise what sort of persons awaken to devotion in their heart, who take seriously the opportunity that's given to them in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And we see this all the time. that the people who finally land are just never the ones that I expected. Persons who have come along through state college, you have some people who think that they're very intelligent, they have some capacity for thinking about things deeply, or maybe even they have some experience in practice of some faith or some religion, but for some reason they cannot land on devotion. They can't get it. And then there are other people who you think they don't say much. They don't seem to express as much interest, at least externally, but internally, they're very deeply contemplating, and their sincerity of approach is such that it affects the Lord to give them knowledge and realization. And so people who, I wouldn't have guessed would be the ones to really take up bhakti, they so often, they surprise me like this. We had this one boy, or many of you met him actually, a boy named Justin. He's graduated last year. And when I first met him, God, he was just so depressed. I really thought he was going to be one of those statistics. He was one that was on my potential suicide list. So I tried to message and call them all the time, because so many of these kids, they just kill themselves. Suicide rates are higher now in America than they've ever been in history. So anyway, he was just such a wreck the first time I met him. And he only came along because this other friend of his was coming. And he would just kind of sit there, just like so distressed. And I tried to chat with him. He just never really seemed interested. He never really seemed affected by anything that we were talking about, that we were sharing. And also one of those types who would come to the kirtan, who would listen but wouldn't chant. When you do a lot of kirtans, you see that some people, they're so intimidated. They'll sit and they'll listen, but they can't open their mouth and speak the words. I see it all the time, actually. They'll have their eyes open, looking around, but they can't just let themselves try it. They don't have that much faith. So he was like that for the longest time. He'd only come because some of his other friends were coming. But because he was exposed to it, hearing about Krishna in the discussions, and then hearing the holy names of Krishna, gradually something happened to him, some sort of effect happened to him, and he just completely transformed, complete 180, from this total wreck who was going to drop out of school, who just couldn't get it together. His health was a mess. His mind was just so scattered, couldn't even sit straight. He had that sort of nervous anxiety where he's always shaking all the time. And then totally transformed into a lover of Krishna, which was a complete surprise to me. And he just messaged me last night, actually. He had to go, he's doing a grad school in Houston, Texas. And he messaged me last night from the temple there, celebrating Janmashtami and Balaram Purnima, sending pictures, leading kirtan. Here's a young American-born Chinese kid, And so therefore he's raised with absolutely no religion. And yet, as totally surprising, it just became one of the ones to totally land on Krishna, to become completely sold out to Krishna. I just got to read to you what he said here. Hold on a second. This is just, it's so incredible what Krishna consciousness can do to people. He said, I've been going through a challenging time these days, but Krishna has given me the resilience that I can't describe, like I've never had before. I really felt last week such a big calling and a connection. So this is the result of scientific Krishna consciousness. This is a person who probably never could have landed on something else. He probably never could have landed on Christianity or Islam, as wonderful as those practices are, but they don't tend to be as comprehensive and scientific as what we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam. So because he heard a scientific understanding of Godhead, because he heard comprehensive knowledge, which satisfied his, which helped him to overcome his attachment and his fear and his anger, he came to the level of devotion. This is even an affront to the traditional casteism, which is so common in India today. This idea that, certain persons are qualified to become Krishna conscious and others aren't. How is it that Shukadeva Goswami prays, Aho bhata sva pacho togariyan, yaj jiva grevarte te nama tubhyam. Te pustapas te juhuvur sasnararya, brahmanuchur nama grinanti te. Even Shukadeva Goswami, was it Shukadeva Goswami said this verse? Even he said, Aho, it's just so incredible, it's so wonderful that even persons who are dog eaters, meaning they just, come from a background which is not very auspicious, which is not very inspired or good. Even those persons, they actually become better than the brahmanas because they can have faith in chanting Krishna's name. Because of having some faith, just a little bit of attachment to chanting Krishna's names, they can actually elevate to a position greater than brahmanas. This is just the remarkable power of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtana. Aho bhata svapacho togariyan. Svapacho literally means a dog cooker, which is quite a literal definition of some Asian cultures. In some places like Korea and China, they do eat dogs. But before we judge, we should recognize that even lower than the svapacho, the dog cooker, is someone who cooks cows. It's actually lower. It's even worse. Perhaps at the time Shukadeva Goswami was saying this, like he couldn't even imagine that someone would also eat cows. So many of us, we have a background even lower than that, than the svapacho, the dog cookers. And yet, what is it? Svapacho kriyan yachjiva grevartate nama tubhyam. Someone who just gets a little attachment for chanting Krishna's holy names, they can rise to the level which is even greater than the caste brahmanas, even greater than those who may be born in a great family, who might have some opulence or some power or some tradition or some knowledge. Even a person can come from such a low place and come to a lofty position of pure devotion for Lord Krishna. And so Shukadeva Goswami is saying, Aho, it's incredible. It's amazing. It's remarkable that transformation is possible by the power of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. We should know that this isn't magic. It's scientific. It's spiritual science, and that's described in Srimad Bhagavatam. That power to totally transform something is scientific. It's not just by chance. It's not just an anomaly. It's actually science. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Kripa Sudasaridhyasya Vishvam Aplaviyantapi Nicha Gaiva Sadabhati Tam Chaitanya Prabhum Bhaje. The Lord Chaitanya's mercy, his kripa, it's like a river, and it floods the entire universe. Vishvam Aplavayantapi totally floods the entire universe. And just like water flows to the lowest place naturally, similarly Lord Chaitanya's mercy especially favors those who are most fallen. Nicha ga. Nicha ga means very low. Just like Trinada pi sunichena. Nicha means like very, very low down. Lord Chaitanya especially favors those who are most fallen. Just like water flows to the lowest place, Lord Chaitanya's mercy floods the entire universe. And so it's remarkable to see that not only has that happened to many of us here, but you can watch it happening to other people. Even guys like Justin. It's just such a wreck. I honestly thought one of these days he's going to just take his own life. I'm not going to see him. And now he's messaging, engaged in service in the temple. Just, saying, I feel a resilience and a shelter of Krishna like I've never felt before. We can have so much confidence that transformation is possible, not just for ourselves, but for others, because understanding Krishna is a science. It's not just a fluke. It's not just an anomaly. It's not just some miracle. It's actually a science. So that's how we should appreciate some of these verses here as being described The Lord is the oldest, the original, who is the possessor of all opulences, the shelter of everything, who is manifest by his own potency, who is the supreme controller, who is self-effulgent. That's how we should understand these verses, that knowing God scientifically gives us the confidence to invest our heart and the conviction that others, anyone, can also learn about Krishna and have their lives completely saved. I apologize for getting a little overwhelmed, a little excited, thinking about some of these wonderful people who come to Krishna consciousness, including all of you dear devotees. So I'll finish there and ask if any of the devotees who are listening have some similar comments or some additions or some corrections, if there's anything I've missed the mark on. Please. Hey, is that Agari Krishna?
Yeah, this is me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear
Hare
me?
Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for that wonderful exposition on, just very vivid and palpable understanding of the Lord. Like, I'm just appreciating this point that understanding Krishna is actually darshan. It's actually receiving his audience. And just like, Arjuna, when you saw the universal form, he realized, oh my God, how have I been talking to this person who I thought is just my cousin brother? He's actually the supreme, And this point also that you're saying about Krishna consciousness is a science, and that you shared Justin's feedback on, and also his story. It's a really wonderful, very amazing. That it's quite evident that he got darshan, because even with Narada Muni as well, his story, he had a changing point because he got the darshan of the Lord, and the Lord then withdrew his darshan, and it just kept him wanting more. So I'm appreciating that the science of Krishna, the way you're saying it, is that when you actually preach, you get real-time data on the power of darshan of the Lord. Because as you said, how could you have predicted that Justin could have received this kind of transformation? So even with us, I mean, what I'm taking from this class is that whatever we do, whatever service, we can actually share it with someone, and we can actually enter the Bhakti laboratory and see the effect. And I think if we do that as sincerely as you are doing it by serving Gurudev's mission in State College, we will be surprised where different persons that we never knew will just get the darshan of the Lord and just have their lives transformed as wonderfully as Justin's life was transformed. So thank you so much for the inspiration.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, we're all doing it. We're all doing it in State College. Because as Gurudev said before I came here, when he suggested going to Penn State, he said, you'll see how much it lends to your outreach to have Gitanagari nearby. When people see that lifestyle in action, he said it just gives so much power to what you're saying, so much more authority to say, look, here's people who's really living their life like that. They're really showing that this is so important to them that they're going to do it. They're not just going to talk about it, but they're going to have a real, wholesome, Krishna conscious life. And so we have success because of you, Agari Krishna Prabhu. But just you're saying that, hearing is darshan just reminded me of this great verse, one of my favorite verses that I want to share from First Canto, Chapter 5. I think it's text number 38 here, where Narada Muni says, Iti murtya vidanena mantra murtima murtikam yajate yagya purusham sassam yagdarshana puman. That thus he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who has no material form. Like that's how you see. You see first through the ears. And that's what's being said in this Bhagavatam verse today as well. He can be perceived directly and also through authority. So yeah, when we're even just, we just give somebody Bhagavad Gita and they can see the Lord there. Like you said, that's the darshan. For some people, they don't see Krishna, they don't see God in, the religion of their parents for so many reasons, that raga, that bhaya, that krodha. But somehow they see when they hear Krishna's holy names. Just totally amazing. So thanks for reminding me of that.
How's this, Prabhu? For the synthesis of hearing with seeing. So, like in physics, right, sound can be represented as a wave. And then now I'm seeing you because there's electromagnetic waves propagating through the ether, right? And we have a device through this mobile phone, and it's capturing these electromagnetic waves. Then it's translating them, and then now I'm seeing you. But really, what you are your the pictures of the cows, the video of the cows, your video, etc. It's actually a wave. It's a sound wave. And so similarly, when you actually hear the Lord, as you said, from the quote, the Lord is he has a non-physical form, just as your form now through technology has been made into a non-physical form. It's an ethereal form that I'm saying. So when you actually hear properly, yes, it's actually seeing the Lord. It's like you don't need a via media, you don't need an Android phone to decode it. The Lord right there, because he's completely self-sufficient. Hare Krishna, as soon as you hear Hare Krishna, immediately you see the Lord. So thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, the spiritual scientist. Yeah, Brahma says something similar, right? Premanjana charita bhakti vilokayena. What is it? Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. Just like we're seeing because we have these devices, some of you maybe have your phone or your computer. That's the device by which we can see and hear each other right now. So Brahma says that we see Krishna in the heart, the medium, the technology is the love, the prema. Then the devotees always see Krishna in the heart. Santa sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. Literally, they see Krishna in the heart all the time. So thank you for always giving such interesting scientific analogies. Hare Krishna, 8 o'clock. I don't know if there's any darshan of the Lord in the temple, so we could finish here. If anybody else wants to share anything or contest against me, you're welcome to.
Well, Prabhu, there's so much to share. The verse was spectacular.
Why not? It's the weekend.
The purport is spectacular. Your commentary also spectacular. There's inspiration for lots of continued discussion, but we're out of time, which is really unfortunate. Just when our enjoyment is at its zenith, right? So what can be done? But I love hearing your stories of your experiences at State College, having myself on the history of college preaching. I have acquired a taste for the nectar of being on the front lines, and so I love to hear the stories, and I'm delighted that we have you at the tip of the spear. Our efforts in Krishna consciousness are a team effort. We have so many devotees who are contributing in various ways, different aspects of the overall mission, but it all culminates in just like in an army, there are so many supporting elements, but all culminates in the guys that are in the trenches on the front lines. So you are our man on the front lines, and I'm delighted that you are, because you are well suited for the job.
May I interrupt your praise? As much as I just love getting puffed up, I just got to interrupt and say that actually, honestly, Devamrita Swami is the tip of the spear, and it was just made so clear when he came a few weeks ago. Just like the level of Krishna consciousness in our Bhakti Yoga Center community just like quadrupled overnight. And suddenly all these people, some of them have been coming for years. They were kind of at a certain level, but when Maharaj came and just gave like the perfect lecture for the setting, suddenly everybody there has just gotten so much more serious. They're all inquiring, I want to have a spiritual master. We spoke about Srila Prabhupada Thursday, and they're inquiring, I want to have a spiritual master. How do I meet? Can you give me more suggestions of what more that I can read? It's just when he came, he just like took it to the next level. So I appreciate your encouragement, Prabhu, but it's definitely Gurudev who's the spearhead. I'm one of the guys just trying to thrust, but thank you.
Well, you're a representative of the spearhead. Devamrita Swami certainly is an empowered emissary for Krishna himself, and we certainly can't deny that. But don't sell yourself short. You're an important cog in this machine. And I went into a panic some years back when I heard a little bird told me that you were seriously contemplating moving to Pittsburgh. So I flipped out, and I thought that's going to be a terrible loss for Gita Nagari. I actually contacted Devamrita Swami, and I tried to encourage you as far as I could to to stick with the state college effort. And I'm really, really glad that you are there and doing your thing. I think it's really ideal for our whole project. I think it's a great asset. Anyway, wonderful verse, wonderful purport. I'm delighted to hear about the progress of these souls in state college. This is what we live for, to be able to somehow or other rescue some of these fallen souls, as many as we possibly can. And we expect that at some point or other, they in turn will propagate Krishna consciousness further in the hearts of others. And one day, the whole world will be drowned in Krishna consciousness, but one step at a time. Hey, I like your treatment of this verse, and the reference to what was the Bhagavad Gita 4:10 is there is another verse. What is that? Is Bhagavad Gita 2:56, right? Has very similar meaning, or at least utilizes some of the same words. It says
attachment, fear, and anger. Absolutely
right. Yeah. So says one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. So how does one become possessed of a steady mind? And as you have explained, that to have a comprehensive understanding of Krishna is an important part of developing a steady mind. It's how we eliminate our doubts. Krishna says in 7th chapter, first verse, he says, "Now hear, O son of Bharata, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." So this freedom from doubt is how we become steady. And as you pointed out, it's unfortunate that in other traditions, there is just not that much knowledge available. The Shastras are limited, and due to circumstances. What was it that Jesus said? I can't recall. In essence,
in my Father's house, there are so many things, but your ears can't hear it, or something like that.
Right, yeah, you could not bear it. It's translated in various ways, but yeah, so he acknowledged that there's a lot more to be known, but circumstantially, I guess the people that he was speaking to were just not ready to hear all of that. So we're blessed, we're fortunate that we have Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures coming from a time and a place where evidently people were able to hear a great deal more, and so we're able to benefit from that. It's wonderful to hear these things, these extraordinary descriptions, detailed descriptions of the Supreme Personality of God, and it's so wonderful to be able to understand something about who God is, what it means. You don't get a lot of that from other traditions. Sometimes heavy on the sentiment, but light on the science, and or sometimes a lot of dogma, but not so much deep and detailed understanding. So we are very, very specially blessed. And so I appreciate your discussion of these facts today. I think you did a good job of covering that subject, and I thank you. It was ecstatic. Makes me want to jump up out of my bed here and dance around the room a little bit to a little Vaishnav jig.
Hare Krishna. Yes, we are blessed. Our unique asset is Srila Prabhupada's books. There's nothing more comprehensive than Srila Prabhupada's books. All the religions of the world, they have faith, they have devotion, they have some knowledge of God, but we have Prabhupada's books, and that's so unique. So let's take advantage of our inheritance. And then I really want to wrap up because we're over time, but I'll just answer to Chris here. He's asking, should you check in with people, those who are budding, who are favorable, who are kind of new? If you check it, yes, absolutely. Check in with people regularly. Something that I always do. Even those I know, or even those I think, maybe they're not going to get serious about bhakti, but still just out of care. Actually, you never know. Like I said, I'm always surprised which ones can eventually get serious about Krishna. But we should check in not just because we're like trying to preach to them, but if you really care and you check in and you message them or you stay in contact, then they're touched by that. You can really save a life. And what's more, you might even save their soul. So absolutely, check in. We have no excuses. It's just so easy to send a message to somebody. I was been thinking about you, or, I was listening to this kirtan, I thought you might like it. Just send a link to something. It's just so easy to do that all the time. I spend a lot of time doing that, just messaging people that have come in contact, even those who, they may not even be very serious about Krishna, but just to show that I care about them and think about them. And I highly recommend doing that as much as you possibly can. It's so simple, and it can just, it can really mean a lot to some people. We might take for granted because we have so many friends in Krishna consciousness. We're always together. We're always associating, But a lot of people, they don't get that. And so it's really special for them just to receive a message. Hey, how you been? Been thinking about you. Here's a nice picture of Krishna. Just like that, All right. We should end, unless Tarikabu was raising his hand to come.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to say that Srila Prabhupada assured us that actually all of these people, every one of them that comes in contact with Krishna consciousness, they take a little prasad, they hear the holy names, they are all going to become Krishna conscious. It's just a question of when. Some of them become Krishna conscious very, very soon. Some of them, it might take even a few lifetimes. But all of them, once they make this contact, the seed is planted and eventually it will fructify. They're all going to become wonderful devotees one day. All of them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wow. You got some faith, Tarikabu. Thank you. And Srila Prabhupada did that also. Chris, you can read all of his letters. Prabhupada was always writing letters, checking in with people, sending them words of encouragement, expressing care and affection. You can actually get books of printed volumes of all the letters that Srila Prabhupada wrote. And you can see we can do the exact same thing right now. Just check in with people, show some affection, some care, and get a little inspiration in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada did it even before the internet. So we can do it also. All right, thanks everybody for tolerating. We're a little over time for listening. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Prema Nandi, Hari Hari Bo.